It is redirecting to Facebook Live now.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Tuesday Talk. This evening, we will have a conversation about cold cases and the impact on our community. I am so excited for our panelists tonight. We have joining us tonight for this conversation Detective Eddy Velazquez of the Davie Police Department, who has agreed to come as a part of this conversation tonight. Detective Velazquez has been a law enforcement officer for 22 years. He worked as a patrol officer for Davie Police Department until 2011, when he was promoted to the Criminal Investigation Unit, assigned to work on property crimes. Detective Velazquez then transferred to major crimes, where he investigated homicides, shootings, stabbings, and officer-involved shootings. Since 2019, he has worked on several cold cases that date back for nearly 50 years. Through networking, he has worked with some of the most renowned professionals in the cold case community. They share the same passion and eagerness to bring justice to each victim. He is an advocate for cold cases and the families that it affects. And you will hear from him as we move forward with our panel discussion. If you could go ahead and give him some virtual love as we welcome him to our panel tonight.
Thank you, guys. How are you guys?
We also have joining us for this conversation tonight, Mr. Ryan Backman. He is the founder and executive director of Project Cold Case Incorporated. Mr. Backman is the founder and executive director of this amazing organization, which is a non-for-profit organization dedicated to serving families of unsolved homicide victims. In 2009, Ryan's father, Cliff Backman, was shot and killed during a robbery in what remains one of Florida's 17,000 reported unsolved murders. Founded in 2015, Project Cold Case provides long-term emotional support to victims' families through support groups, counseling, and case-specific next step approaches for advancing investigations, all while working to publicize cold cases long out of the public's eye and linking families and information and law enforcement together. Please help me welcome Mr. Ryan Backman to our platform tonight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Senator.
Thank you. We also have joining us Miss Bertha Hurtado, who is a Davie Police Department crime scene investigator and forensic anthropologist. This is a bad sister, y'all. As a crime scene investigator for Davie Police Department, she has served for more than 15 years in investigation. She is extremely passionate about investigating unresolved cases. In 2017, she was introduced to her first cold case, which further fueled her desire to bring justice to the victims and their families. Bertha has utilized the most current scientific techniques and investigative strategies to obtain leads or identify the victim, suspect, or both to achieve this goal. Bertha has also lent her expertise in many other areas to assist the team in analyzing human skeletal remains for victims of the internal armed conflict and human rights violations in Peru. We're happy tonight to have you with us as well, Bertha.
Thank you, everybody.
Can we give her some special love tonight? So as we get started, according to the information from Project Cold Cases website, of approximately 57,181 homicides committed in Florida from 1965 to 2021, 19,549 are currently listed as unsolved. I'm going to repeat that. Approximately 57,181 homicides were committed in the state of Florida from 1965 to 2021. And of those amounts, we still have 19,549 that are currently listed as unsolved. The accurate data on cold case is really difficult for us to obtain because we know some cases are not reported as cold cases. So we are working with this very unique group of professionals who care about people and care about families to bring forth legislation in this legislative session. And we know that good policy always comes through subject matter experts in the community. So tonight, we thank you for gathering with us for this conversation as we learn more about cold cases and what we can do together to bring closure to these cases, as well as help these families begin the process of healing. So our panel will now lead us in a discussion, and we will start with you, Mr. Backman, and you could tell us a little more about yourself, what you do at your organization, and then we'll hear from our detectives.
Thank you, Senator. I really appreciate this opportunity to sit on this panel and talk about something that is very personal to me, but sometimes often feels overlooked. So as you mentioned in my bio, in 2009, my dad was murdered. He was working on a Saturday afternoon at a newly renovated office building doing construction. And somebody walked in and shot him, took his wallet and fled the scene. My dad lived long enough to call 911 and give the dispatcher a brief description of the individual that had just shot him. Unfortunately, my dad lost consciousness on the phone with that 911 operator and was pronounced deceased at the time he got to the hospital. For me, my entire experience with law enforcement and the criminal justice system was basically seen through a television. Which is what I have learned is not a very accurate portrayal of how the system actually works. But when that's your only exposure to it, you truly believe that there's an arrest coming and it's coming quickly. Unfortunately, that was not the case with my dad and his murder. Next week, Tuesday, will be 14 years since he was murdered. The case remains unsolved. And while I was navigating this process early on and grieving and looking for people to turn to, I realized that there was limited resources out there. And then as my dad's case grew colder and colder, the resources were even less. And so my idea was to start an organization that focused specifically on these unsolved victims' families. So Project Cold Case was founded in 2015. The basis and the foundation of the organization is so families know their loved one is not forgotten and that somebody else cares. And that's really all that the organization can promise anybody. We're not investigators. I'm not Eddy or Bertha. That's not my skill set. I was a project manager in an architectural firm the day that my dad was murdered. I switched careers within a year of his murder and have been a victim advocate ever since. But along that journey, I recognized voids in services and created an organization that I thought could help in some of those ways, which again is mostly support, awareness, and advocacy. I want families to know that they can share their loved one's story on our social media and on our website. And I want families to know that their loved one's picture will be on our website, spotlight articles on our website as a way to create a digital footprint. A lot of our families, the victims, didn't exist online. Anybody that was murdered before 1995 may not exist on Google. So we wanted to change that and make sure that all of these families got the awareness and the publicity that their loved ones deserve, obviously in hopes of resolving the case and someone seeing it and coming forward. And along the way, I've met some amazing law enforcement and public servants. And together we've kind of bonded and tried to push this issue to the forefront, because as you were reading off those numbers, I think most people have no clue how many murders happen, much less how many of them remain unsolved in our state and even beyond. I mean, that number creeps up into close to 300,000 across the entire country of unsolved murders just since 1980. So there's definitely a need here. There are people that are pushing legislation and want legislation, and we want to help to educate the community and make sure everybody understands how important it is. Because beyond just looking at me, and I recognize some names that have joined us tonight as other family members that have experienced this kind of loss. But beyond that, this is a public safety issue, because the people that are responsible for murdering my dad, the person responsible and responsible for some of these other families in attendance, are still out there. And that means they could do it again. And so it truly becomes a public safety issue, even if you don't care necessarily about us individually and our losses. Nobody wants the guy that killed my dad standing behind them in line at the grocery store, I'm pretty sure. So so thank you for this opportunity. I'm happy to assist and answer any questions I can and help in any way I can.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you for using such a painful experience for a purpose in a very unselfish way to help others. You know, life is a mystery, but it is commendable what you're doing. And I thank you on behalf of the residents of the 580,000 residents in Florida District 32. And I thank you personally from the bottom of my heart. So now I'm going to ask our detectives to come, and I guess we will do ladies first and talk to us about what you do so that we have an understanding, and then why do we need legislation to address this? And I'm so glad that we have this conversation with law enforcement. We do have some great law enforcement officers that are doing a great job. Sometimes we only see the bad on television, but we have to be careful in making sure that just like we have the bad highlighted, that we highlight those that are doing a great job with public safety. And I'm honored tonight to be with two of those individuals from the Davie Police Department. Ms. Bertha.
Senator Osgood, thank you so much for allowing this platform and for giving us the opportunity to discuss such an important issue that we're facing, not just in Florida, but nationwide. I'm a crime scene investigator for the Davie Police Department. I have been here for almost 5 years. And within these 5 years, alongside my colleague and my partner in the cold case unit, was establishing a need, not just based on the numbers, but also based on the longevity of these cases. A lot of the cases that we have encountered are pretty much 50 years old, or approximately 50 years old. So that becomes a big problem when you're dealing with suspects, when you're dealing with families, a lot of the families have passed without any answers, and a lot of the suspects also are either close to or have already passed. So that becomes a very important factor to consider. And when we realized that there was a tremendous need in this department, we decided to really take a step forward and go through each and every file to see exactly what it was that we had. And in that trajectory, we have been fortunate to have identified 2 females that were found drowned in a canal here in Davie. And that became, the stepping stone, or the what propelled us to continue and really push legislation, because it's not just the Davie Police Department. There's many other agencies out there. We have been fortunate at least to have the financial backing, but there are other agencies that do not have the financial backing, and that becomes the number one issue, meaning no manpower to assist in reinvestigating these cases, and no financial support. So there's a lot that can be done. And it's just a matter of showing out the numbers. I think that the numbers will speak for themselves, especially when you start breaking down the larger jurisdictions and the amount of cold cases that they have. Not only do we have a large number, but we also have families that are also waiting for answers. And that's something that is not seen within the brass or the command. We are the ones who are in contact with these families, and we are the ones who have to supply them with information. And that is extremely difficult, because sometimes we don't have immediate answers. And it's not that we don't have immediate answers, but we also don't have either the financial need or the financial support or the actual availability of other detectives to assist in, the case. So now we have a commitment, and a responsibility to these families. And we are the ones who speak for the ones who have passed, for the victims of, these horrendous cases. And I think it shouldn't be that way. Cold cases should not be placed in an area of the forgotten ones. They should constantly be looked at. Technology changes, science advances, and we have a responsibility, especially because we are public servants. We have a responsibility for our community. And, it takes sometimes drastic decisions, and it takes, these large leaps to make a change.
Thank you. Mr. Velazquez.
Thank you, Senator Osgood, for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be even discussing this topic as passionate as we've been with the cold cases and the families that we've been involved with. Like you mentioned on the bio, I've been an officer almost 22 years. I've been investigations for a little bit. While I was working homicides, I got to learn a lot on the investigative part of it. But what really started drawing me to cold cases was dealing with the families. Every family dealt with death of their loved ones differently. And, when Bertha and I started working these cases, we discovered that these families still had that pain. They were holding on to that pain, and they were, for so many years, like Bertha said, going back almost 50 years, families have tried to move on. And once we started working it, we really found that it was well needed for these cases to be looked at, because, like you said, technology has changed. You see it all the time, all over the TVs that have, they have shows. You see it on the news that comes all over nationwide, cold case solved after 50 years, 40 years, 30 years. Most of that is through technology. Well, as easy as it is through technology, as easy as it may seem, if no one puts the case to these labs to these private labs or utilize the technology, then basically they just sit there, you know. And the experience, we've collected data from Florida, mainly our Tri-County area, and we've seen the amount of cases are just increasing because a lot of cases they're not being solved, whether it's manpower, whether it's just, you know, the cases or crime in general has skyrocketed. But what we've also discovered is every agency is different. So the amount of cases that you guys see, it's probably a little bit more than that. When we first started looking into our cases, for example, in the Davie Police Department, there was always, we had 16 cases, and that was the number that they used for so many years. And when people think of cold cases, they think of a homicide, which the majority of them are homicides. But we can't forget of, you know, the unidentifieds. One of the ones that we just identified, it's from 1984. It was considered a unidentified case, cold case, not a homicide, but it was ruled a homicide. Well, it was on the section of unidentified. It wasn't even on that list. So it wasn't until, you know, the female was identified, family from Boston. She had a daughter. And I mean, Bertha can tell you that, you know, when these phone calls were made for the first time and you talk to a family member and you basically share information that, hey, do you know this person? And you know, you would just get chills because the emotions, you can't hide that. You can't make that up, you know, and that just gave me more passion and to bring closure to these families. And the numbers speak for themselves. It's in volumes. I just recently learned that Dade County alone, Dade County is a huge umbrella. They cover a lot of the smaller departments, but they have over 10,000 cold cases. That's just one county, and we're talking about, you know, the entire state of Florida. So you're going to see those numbers that are going to possibly double. In you know, when you look at these numbers, you think of cases of homicide. Well, you know what? It's not just the cases; it's the families that have lived the pain for so many years. And when they wanted answers, they were either turned away or ignored. And that can't happen anymore. You know, this is a national crisis. It's continued to go up, and Ryan can tell you. I mean, Ryan goes, you know, and thank you, Ryan, for what you've done. I mean, the first person that we thought of was you because of your involvement with the community, you know, and it goes nationwide. And your organization, what you guys have done, but it's needed. It's needed because there's a lot of pain. And again, that's only with a few cases that we've seen here. But bringing this to legislation, well, like we had a phone call today with one of the guys from Georgia. You know, they have it on their state level, and they're super psyched. They're already working with families, working with cases, and it's nice to hear that. And it's nice that it's a domino effect, because at the end of the day, we all work together. We have a very good community within the cold cases. You know, we like you mentioned in my bio, we work with the best of the best, you know, people that are also passionate about what they do. And it's a teamwork. It's, you know, so putting this into law, it's going to help us out tremendously. At the end of the day, the community is the most important here. You have family living, and like you said, in just your district alone, I'm sure there's numerous families that have had loved ones that were murdered, that went missing, you know, foul play suspected, you know, and they don't have answers. And I think it's time. Too much time has gone by, and this is going to help us to bring some closure to these families.
Thank you all for sharing. As we talk about legislation, the bill that we have worked on collectively will put in statute requirements of how to handle cold cases and allow the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to take over cold cases. And it requires cold cases that cannot be processed by local agencies for whatever reason, if it's the lack of manpower, the lack of funding. And it requires that cold case data be collected and sorted by an educational institution in the state, which we have gotten Florida Atlantic University to be that institution. And thank you for sharing the Georgia bill with us. I do want to commend the best staff in the whole wide world, Ms. Julie Fishman, Nigel Smith, and Ruby, who's not with us tonight, for a lot of the legwork in meeting with you guys, meeting with former Georgia legislators, and just keeping all of the work going behind the scenes. They actually met with several families from Broward who are waiting for multiple murders of family members to be solved. And particularly one woman's sister was murdered over 34 years ago. And, my staff indicated that they could still see her pain. And we think about the time that we're in, and we're seeing mental health in crisis right now. To live with the longstanding burden of a loss of a loved one without any closure can have significant impact on an individual in a family and a community, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. I just know from recently losing my last living parent. I was raised by my grandparents in December, and my birthday was Saturday. And it was the first time that I had a birthday in a long, long time that my granddad didn't call me, say happy birthday, and curse me out. And I mean that literally. He's gonna say happy birthday, how old are you this year? And then he's gonna use some cuss words to say that you told me you was that same age last year, but you're getting older in his own way. And just not to have that this year, and thinking about how I felt, it's unimaginable to me to have a situation like this where people's lives are not valued, that we solve these cases and better understand what's happening with them. We have a question in the chat about the proposed legislation. The bill is in drafting right now. We're looking over the next week or so to have something that we could, have vetted again. My staff has worked very hard with the detectives and with Mr. Backman to put something into place. And we're going to need all hands on deck as we move forward in making sure that this is taken care of and that we're able to make sure that these kinds of cases are resolved. So I want to pause right now, Mr. Backman, to see if there's another family on the Zoom that would want to come forth and tell their stories. I think the least we can do is give an audience to people that are, enduring this hardship, so that they can also know that we care and that they're not alone. So do you have anyone that you would like for us to invite to the platform at this time?
Well, I think it's important when we are working with victims that we, meet them where they are, survivors. I know of a few that are on here, this call, that we work directly with. Some of them have Florida cases, some of them don't have Florida cases, but they're all very interested in what we're doing. So I want them to feel comfortable, and I don't want to pressure them, but if any of the survivors want to and are willing to speak up, please, raise your hand. And I would also like to point out that it's really good to see on this call, beyond some of our families that we serve, other law enforcement and retired law enforcement professionals that have joined us as well, to see what we're working on here and how we're going to do it. I see 3 other names on here that work with law enforcement or have retired law enforcement that are, committed. You mentioned earlier, Senator Osgood, about the good law enforcement and the ones that are very passionate about cold cases and doing the right thing and helping families. And I'm thrilled to see a number of them on this Zoom today. So I want to just make sure I thank them. Obviously, Eddy and Bertha, who I have a great relationship with, but beyond that, a few others. And I would ask any of the survivors, if you are willing to speak, please, I think maybe just put it in the chat that you're willing to, and we would love to hear from you. But I also don't want to pressure you. If you're here to observe, I don't want you to feel like you're being, put in the spot. So Tammy would like to.
Okay, and Mr. Backman, as we are adjusting for Tammy, would you feel comfortable calling the names of those law enforcement officers so that we can celebrate them?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dave Nutting is on this call, who is retired from the Orange County Sheriff's Office, but still connected to law enforcement and solving crimes across the country. Kim Brewster, who is on the call as well, has a good bit of, is retired, I believe, from law enforcement after 20 plus years. And then Crystal Hans is a forensic entomologist from Purdue University that works closely with law enforcement, as well as one of only, a couple dozen forensic entomologists in North America. So, those are the ones that ring a bell right out of the gate. So I personally thank them for joining and caring.
Yeah, and we thank you for your continued service. Sometimes we transition from a position, but our passion and what's in our heart and the way we feel about people, it never goes away. So thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Tammy, for agreeing to share tonight. We would love to hear from you at this time, and we're sorry that you are having this experience, and hopefully we can do something to help.
Thank you, Senator Osgood. Thank you, Ryan. I'm glad that I was asked to join. And my father was murdered in Columbia, South Carolina, and it just passed of 27 years. It's unsolved, it's cold. I'm sort of wondering if I'll ever get answers or justice. He went to the Rosewood boat landing off of Rosewood Drive in Columbia on a Saturday night, August 17th, 1996. There were 3 witnesses, and apparently there was a gentleman that was walking. They got to talking. I don't know. They don't know if they knew each other or not. Where the boat landing was and how it was set up back then, the grounds were all cut down, and you were able to go down and sit on benches and whatever. You could fish, have a picnic. But they said that they had sort of walked down towards the river bank there. The next thing they knew, they heard my dad screaming, telling them that he could give them money, he could give him whatever that he wants. And he came out being stabbed to death. He was multiply stabbed. By the time they got him to the hospital and tried to do surgery, he was already gone. Unfortunately, I've had quite a few detectives. His DNA is water. They have not found the gun. The knife, excuse me. I've had Face Logic. They have taken the composite that was done by the 3 witnesses, and they have been able to bring it up a little bit up to date. So I help share with that. The detective that I do work with, they're not doing much. It's just a matter of me sharing and getting his story out. Project Cold Case helps every year with him for around his date. And so we share everybody that we can to get their stories out. So that's where I'm at.
And thank you for sharing tonight, and thank you for your unselfish way of living that, I can only imagine how difficult it must be. But thank you for coming on tonight and being willing to speak up. We also have Lori.
Thank you.
Hi, I want to also thank Senator Osgood and Mr. Backman and the policemen that are here, and thank you for all your hard work. It is definitely appreciated. This is hard, and I apologize. September 8th, 1970 was the date my dad was murdered. It's just past 53 years. The case is unsolved. My case is a little different. my mom was killed 2.5 years later, checking out a lead on my dad's case. The police have said my mom was just a car accident. However, the policeman who appeared on her scene was a friend of our dad's, and he was a chief of a small town. This is in Pennsylvania. The police chief told us, it's in the Poconos, he told us that our mom was murdered and the cases were tied. He passed away in 1985 and all his records disappeared. On my mom's case. My dad's case, my husband and I, Randy, went to see the coroner last year, and the coroner said the autopsies and everything's missing on both cases. So we have had a difficult time. The past 2 years, we've found out more than we have ever been told. I am a twin. The only 2 survivors left in my family are myself and my twin sister. We had 3 brothers who have passed. My oldest brother, we were all under 18 when this happened. The state never stepped in. No one took care of us. My oldest brother just passed. He was going to be a snowbird, moved to Florida in 2021, got hit with COVID and passed away. So we are left trying to solve this. My dad was shot 5 times. He was driving a taxi. He went to a resort to pick up a fare and never came home. My mom waitressed dinner and she never came home. The cases are still unsolved. We have been in constant contact with the state police, local police, politicians, and we are just shoved under the rug. And we were brought up to respect the police, which we have always done. We trusted them. The police chief who was on our dad's case, Robert Labar, just passed away. And we spoke to him. He was a good friend of our family, so he has always been honest with us. The other policemen have not been honest. Everything's been shoved under the rug again and again and again. We recently found out from the local coroner in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, he wanted to exhume both bodies to resolve this. The assistant DA is running to be the DA now, said they don't have the resources, so they will not exhume. So we just set up a GoFundMe page to try to get finances to exhume and get answers. And we're just ignored. And you act like you want to say something.
In the last few days, we've had a friend that's doing undercover investigation, and God bless him, this guy has really turned up a lot. And it seems the girls put out a poster. I'm going to give a brief, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it shows both murders, the 2 parents, and some contact information for the DA tips, the local police, and our email. Well, it shook some trees. We've been placing this poster all over, and pretty soon a guy came forward to our investigator and said he knows exactly what happened, and he's gonna get the name of the guy who did it. And we've been waiting 2 days to get an answer. But from all the investigations we did, this witness sounds very credible, because the state police, newspapers, and coroners had the timeline so messed up. And we're even saying this didn't make sense. And when we were building our timeline from credible witnesses, this person's timeline fit exactly what was going on. So we're waiting to hear what happens. But it is mob related, from what we understand. There's a very large mob presence here in northeastern Pennsylvania in the Poconos. And because we've done a lot of this, getting information out of there, and all these different investigators helping us, it's been insurance. And we're hoping something turns in this cold case. And this witness also said that, yes, the mother went to follow a lead. I think she was lured out, and she threatened these people that she was going to the police, and they said they killed her on the spot. And I guess they must have put her in the car and pushed her off the cliff, down the embankment, because it took like 8 hours before anyone found her. And these kids were orphaned at age 15.
Our
God
oldest
knows.
was 18.
They fell through the cracks. No social agencies helped these children. They worked 3 jobs, stayed in school, and they even put themselves through college later, which was a first for their entire generation family. So God bless them. These girls worked their hands off, never really had a childhood to speak of. And now we're closing in. We're hoping to get answers to this case. And we're on pins and needles right now. So, and God bless you guys for having a site out there where people can look and even locally jog memories. I mean, we're putting a GoFundMe page out there, and we tell people you don't have to donate. Read the story, pass it to your friends. This is what we need. We need to wake people up and get involved. I mean, granted, the police have so many resources, but let's get out there and say, hey, because we've had other people come back and say, hey, we heard this, we heard that. And I think the families really need to get involved, and the police have to let these families know, get involved, ask questions.
But we have also been told no one has ever started this case from start to finish
Right.
after the state police had it in the 70s. And we've questioned that and we've asked why, and their answer is the resources. I get that to a point, but what frustrates me is, and I don't mean this the wrong way, we've all lived in Pennsylvania our entire lives in Monroe County, and we're taxpayers, but the county does not want to give back to help us. Our dad was a World War II vet and a POW for over 2 years. Our mom lost a son in Vietnam. She's a Gold Star mom, and we're just shoved under the rug, and it's frustrating.
Your dad was a POW.
That's what it said. And it's frustrating and hurtful. You go to the politicians and no one will help you. We don't know where to turn.
But we turn
thank
to
you.
ourselves, yeah.
But
turn
we
to
thank
ourselves.
you for having this, because it means that you care and we appreciate it.
Thank both of you for sharing this afternoon. And, you know, as we're going down this road, I'm a person that, you know, when I'm doing something, I'll fight for it to the end. And maybe this will start a movement and that can help Ryan as he's moving from state to state trying to get this done. We've now added to the team, and we will keep adding to the team. And I'm so sorry that you don't have closure, but just know you're not ignored. You know, we do care and we will do our best. I'm going to ask our law enforcement officers if they would respond in any way that they deem necessary, because it's helping the families, but it's also helping them who really have a desire to do this work and have these cases resolved as well. So law enforcement, and you guys can decide who go first.
Go ahead, Bertha. Ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy and Lori, for sharing your story. And as I was listening to both of your stories, this is something that we hear all the time. The resources, we don't have enough manpower. And I remember initially when Eddy and I had started this, trying to build this unit, was that we found that working cases on a part-time basis was not effective. Because in addition to having our duties and responsibilities, we had to initiate the study, as I would call it, and Eddy as well, the study of the file. We had to learn everything. We had to learn every single detail, from the initial call to the first responding officer involved, who were the detectives involved, who were the witnesses, who was the victim's past, everything. So that does take a lot of time. And we found that while we were pulled in many directions, that didn't work out because we would have to step away from the case and then reassess after weeks or days or weeks at a time. So that led us to continuously go over again. And that to us was a waste of time because clock was ticking. And we also felt from the family members that, you know, they had been hearing that constantly. Yeah, we'll touch on the case. Yes, we will look at it, et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, it's difficult for me to say, but not a lot of people were truly committed to learning the case file. And that is a big problem. I understand that there are individuals that had a lot of responsibilities during certain times and they had to deal with their own cases. And that's why we brought it to everyone's attention that a cold case cannot be addressed on a part-time basis. So unfortunately on our end, we fought hard. We did. We fought really hard. Eddy and I did not stop. It was chief after chief after chief. And as we continuously spoke to other law enforcement personnel, we found that it wasn't just us or our department. It was a general consensus. It was resources and it was finances. So we took it upon ourselves to really hone into at least 3 cases at a time. And if we had to work on a part-time basis, have it be on a part-time basis, but every single day. That way we wouldn't lose momentum because we have Lori, we have you, and we have Tammy waiting for answers. We have 2 families, 3 families, as a matter of fact, who are also waiting for answers that have been waiting for years. And part of our commitment is reaching out to them and giving them the respect and information of the advances that we have made, or maybe not. You know, maybe nothing has been, you know, dealt with in a month or 2 months or 3 months, but at least giving that respect. The family members would also call us to check and see if anything has happened, and we would convey the information to them. So ultimately, part of what is needed is having this pass through legislation. So there are no issues and there are no, well, we have no resources, no excuses to work on these cases. These cases need to be worked on just as current cases. They cannot be, technology has advanced, science has advanced as well. Utilize the resources and the current tools to start working it. And sometimes, you know, the changes in investigative techniques has been great as well. So not only can a case, like for instance, Lori, there's no case file in your parents' case. There's no ME report on your parents' case. So now it's the investigative process. It's not just the scientific part, but there's a critical component, which is the investigative part. And that's pretty much starting the case from scratch. So yeah, and that does take time, and that does take resources, and that does take a financial toll for departments. However, these cases are as important as current cases. So, you know, if Florida does start with this, then families will finally have some answers, maybe not at the pace that they would like, but definitely no more closing doors on cold cases or the victims' families.
Thank you, Bertha. And I'd like to add again, thank you, Lori and Tammy. I'm sorry to hear about your parents and what happened, and thank you guys for sharing your story. And just by listening to it again, it gives me goosebumps because we get close to the families because we take it that personal. So it's a lot more than it's never just a case, you know. It's that dedication and that commitment, like Bertha said, and like Ryan's mentioned, it's being committed to working these cases. And you know, like anything else, you want to get a good job, you want to do it well done, you have to be committed to it. You know, if you do it little by little, it's going to take you a long time. And unfortunately for us, we don't need more time. We need to do it now. You know, one of the biggest things that we face in cold cases that we faced, even like some of the cases going back to the early 70s, is exactly what has happened to your case, Lori, to your parents, where some things were lost, you know, because back then everything was written, it was kept in boxes, there was no electronic files kept. It's whatever was in the file, that's all that there was. Time has passed, things have gotten lost. But again, I think, you know, not every case is going to be solved, but I would think that at the very end, you know, you have the closure knowing that, hey, they worked on my loved one's case, they brought it to contemporary status. And I take this from Bertha because it's true, it's contemporary status. You want to know that everything has been done, everything possible has been done to solve the cases of your loved ones. You know, getting the word out there. You know, again, I go back to Ryan, you know, being involved with so many families, it's the awareness. I mean, I don't think people realize how big this is for us to get this passed through legislation. Like Bertha said, I don't think any family wants to hear, you know, I'm sorry, we just don't have the time, or we don't have the money to do it. That's the last thing you want to hear, you know. So I think you guys deserve to have your cases worked on. I will tell you that based on the NIJ, only 7% out of all the law enforcement, over 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the country, only 7% have a dedicated cold case unit. So, and again, if you think about those numbers, and you think about the numbers that are going to increase, because they will increase. Again, there's going to be part of this this bill is to report all the cases throughout every agency, basically report how many cold cases you have. That's when you're going to see the numbers double, if that. You know, you're going to see it grow because now you have to report it. And I will tell you again, a lot of these cases have just pushed aside. Most of them has been they've been worked on, but back then in the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, technology wasn't the same. There was no, the DNA wasn't, you know, like it is today. DNA today is not like it was in 2016. I mean, it's that fast, the advancement. Genealogy now is in the picture. You have a lot of private labs. Both of our unidentifieds that we had, it was through genealogy. So there is numerous investigative tools. The hardest part is actually putting the worker to use those tools and, again, make things, you know, get answers, because it's there. It's definitely there. So, you know, we're very strong at what we do. We're strong believers. And even though it's a small department down in South Florida, we want to get the word out there to across the country. You know, you guys that are in Pennsylvania, anywhere in the nation. I mean, if you guys have any questions, you know, Ryan has our contact information. Whatever we can do to get your community up and running. Like I said, we're hoping this is going to be a domino effect. We worked really closely with Texas. With Georgia, and even before that, this is something that's passed on the federal level. So this is going to happen rather quickly, and not just here in Florida, but I'm talking about across the U.S. So we need the community. You know, the strongest part for all of this is the community. You know, you guys to get out and show awareness. You know, that's what's strong. That's the muscle of everything, is you guys. You know, the victims or the families of the victims, and then the community in general. So again, thank you for sharing your story. And Senator, I can't thank you enough for giving us the opportunity to share our experience and to get it out there, because we really need to get on this, and it's long overdue. It really is.
Thank you, guys. And I'm going to ask Ryan if he could give us some closing remarks. I'm also going to ask my staff to drop in the chat the link to our office's e-blast. They already did. So if you haven't signed up, please sign up. It don't matter where you live. We try to communicate and keep these things before people as we're working on them. And, you know, we will certainly circle back, because I'm going to need you guys to make some additional phone calls and emails. For me, this is a nonpartisan issue. It's about people and caring for people and helping them have closure and allowing their family members to be dignified And it is truly what I believe our nation represents and what we should be doing. So Ryan, can you give us some closing remarks? And again, thank all of you that have shared your stories, those that have been doing this work and participating here tonight. We thank you so much. And to my staff, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Osgood, obviously for this opportunity, and Bertha and Eddy. I appreciate this moment because you've heard from just a few of our families. Some of the others, even on the call, decided they preferred not to talk because this is really hard. And oftentimes these families feel forgotten. And they feel like there is nobody out there fighting for them. But there is, there absolutely are people out here fighting. There's some on this call now, but beyond that also, I'm in DC right now where I just did a presentation yesterday morning for the International Homicide Investigators Association and their DNA and Genealogy Summit to 300 law enforcement professionals that are in that room because they are committed to helping families of unsolved homicides and cold cases. And we have this opportunity to not only craft this legislation, but really make a difference in our community with this legislation. And there's members from the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation here. I've cornered them and talked about the Coleman-Baker legislation that they passed last year. That we're mirroring and going to bring to Florida, and they're not complaining about it. You know, there's this mindset that law enforcement is going to say, "Oh, you're adding more to our plate." Oh, no, we're adding resources to their plate, and it's necessary and needed. And I, for one, thank everybody that is a part of this, that is pushing this, and that I know is committed to this because it's me, it's multiple families that are on this call. And it's 20,000 other families just in Florida alone, at least, that are desperate for this kind of assistance and help. So, Senator Osgood, thank you for pushing this legislation. Thank you for allowing us to speak on it and on the importance of it tonight. And I look forward to helping whatever we need to do to get this across the finish line and make this a law.
And again, thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to serve our state in this way and lifting this very critical issue to our community, to the state legislators. And I am very hopeful that we will get this across the finish line. This legislative session, we will, work with everything we got, and we will keep working until we're able to make a difference in this area, as well as reach out to other legislators in other areas to look for individuals that can do the same thing in those areas. And to our families that have lost loved ones, again, you're certainly in our hearts and in our prayers as we move forward. And thank you for sharing your stories. And you're not alone. Your family has grown tonight, and we're hoping that it will continue to grow with the work that Ryan is doing and the work that we're now doing together. I think this type of collective excellence is when we're able to really make a difference in the world, when we have different disciplines working together, elected officials, impacted persons, and we listen as elected officials, and then we go forth with legislation that can literally change the lives of people as we move forward. So thank you guys for joining us tonight for Tuesday Talks. We appreciate you, and we thank you again from the bottom of our heart. Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.